What if one book could completely change the way you think about success, communication, money, and life?
It really is that powerful.
In today's deep dive, you are about to discover some of the most powerful lessons ever written about human behavior.
We are going to completely decode why people act the way they do.
Exactly. So welcome back to Read Less.
It is great to be here for this one.
Today we are diving deep into Thomas Erikson's framework from his book, Surrounded by Idiots. And you are going to learn how successful people think differently, how to overcome the fear and friction of workplace conflict, and how to level up your life and your relationships step by step.
It is a total game changer for anyone who works with, well, other humans.
Right. Had you ever walked out of a meeting, practically stomped down the hall, sat in your car, gripped the steering wheel, and genuinely asked yourself, am I losing my mind, or is every single person in that building a complete idiot?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it is the most universal, unspoken frustration of the modern workplace. Or a family gathering, you know, or even just trying to navigate a grocery store on a Sunday.
Right. You have these moments where other people's behavior just defies all logical explanation. And usually when we talk about diagnosing a problem, there's an expectation of precision.
Sure, like a clear-cut issue.
Exactly. Like if you break your arm, the x-ray shows a jagged white line. The doctor points to it and says, there is the fracture.
It is binary. It is clean.
Right. But when you step into the world of human behavior, communication styles, and workplace dynamics, that x-ray machine is just utterly useless.
Yeah, completely useless.
We are looking at a diagnostic landscape that is incredibly murky.
It is the absolute definition of muddy waters. I mean, human intention, motivation, and the way we process information, none of that shows up on a scan.
No, it doesn't.
We just see the resulting behavior, and we judge it entirely through the lens of our own preferences.
Which brings us perfectly to our mission for this deep dive. We are taking on the monumental task of decoding human behavior to answer that exact question. Why does everyone around me seem to act in ways that are just entirely irrational to me?
It is such a vital question.
It really is. So we are exploring the factual concepts and the absolutely wild real-world case studies from Thomas Erikson's framework.
Which popularizes the DISC behavior system.
Yes, exactly. And for you listening, whether you are prepping for a high-stakes negotiation, trying to figure out how to communicate with a stubborn partner, or you are just trying to survive an office where your boss sends terrifying one-word emails, this discussion is going to give you a framework for reading the room.
It really will. But to do that effectively, though, we actually have to dismantle a foundational piece of advice that almost all of us were given in childhood.
Oh, this is the big one.
Yeah, we have to throw out the golden rule.
Treat others as you want to be treated. We are tossing that entirely.
We are tossing it.
I mean, that feels like psychological heresy.
It sounds like it, I know. But think about the mechanical flaw in the golden rule. It operates on the assumption that everyone else shares your exact neurochemistry, your exact processing speed, and your exact emotional needs.
Oh, I see.
The golden rule only works if everyone is a carbon copy of you. And as we are going to explore today, they absolutely are not.
No, definitely not.
So we are replacing a golden rule with the platinum rule. Treat others as they want to be treated.
Treat others as they want to be treated. I love that. But before we can treat people the way they want to be treated, we have to examine why our default setting is to misjudge them so severely in the first place.
Right, the origin of the bias.
Exactly. And the book opens with this origin story that perfectly encapsulates that blind spot.
The Stewart story.
Yes. So Erikson was a 25-year-old consultant, right?
Yeah.
And he goes to interview this man named Stewart.
Right.
Stewart is a 60-year-old entrepreneur, a guy who built a highly successful business from the ground up. And Stewart sits this young consultant down and with total sincerity tells him that his entire company is staffed by complete idiots.
And Stewart wasn't using the term loosely at all.
No, he was dead serious.
He had systematically categorized his own staff. He told Erikson that Department A was full of complete idiots.
Wow.
Yeah. Department B was full of absolute fools, and Department C was so weird and incompetent he couldn't even comprehend how they managed to commute to work every morning.
He was just relentlessly toxic about this. I mean, so much so that his employees had actually engineered a warning system.
This part is unbelievable.
They literally installed a physical traffic light outside the entrance to the building, right above the reception desk.
A literal traffic light.
Yes. If Stewart was in a bad mood, the light was flipped to red.
Wow.
When it was red, Employees, vendors, and even prospective clients would walk in, see the light, turn around, and leave the building.
They would just walk out.
Just walk out. And if he was out of the office, the light was green.
The psychological blind spot there is just staggering. I mean, Erikson eventually asked Stewart the most obvious logical question.
Which what?
He said, who hired all these idiots?
Oh, that is a great question.
Right. The implication being, if you are sitting at the center of an entire organization of fools, what does that make the person who actually selected them?
But Stewart didn't have an epiphany there, did he?
Not at all.
He didn't suddenly realize his own failure in leadership. I think he actually wanted to fetch a shotgun.
Yeah, he was furious. Because for Stewart, the definition of an idiot had absolutely nothing to do with a person's actual intelligence or capability.
Okay, so what was it?
An idiot was simply anyone who didn't process information, communicate, or execute tasks exactly the way Stewart did.
Wow. So he was the baseline.
Exactly. Stewart was using himself as the absolute unquestionable baseline for normal human behavior. Anyone deviating from his frequency was broken.
And this is where we actually get into the underlying science of the DISC method.
Yeah, the real history of it.
Because this isn't just a corporate buzzword, right? It has a long psychological lineage. The roots go back to a psychologist named William Moulton Marston and a book he published in 1928 called Emotions of Normal People.
Marston is a fascinating figure, by the way. He actually created the Wonder Woman comic.
Wait, really? The psychologist who created this system created Wonder Woman.
Yeah. And he helped invent the early polygraph test, too.
That is wild.
Right. But his psychological work was groundbreaking because at the time, most psychology was focused on abnormal behavior, on diagnosing illness.
Sure.
Marston wanted to map how normal people behaved based on two axes. First, whether they viewed their environment as favorable or antagonistic.
Okay.
And second, whether their response to that environment was active or passive. That created a 4-quadrant matrix.
And then decades later, a man named Bill Bonstetter, along with his son David, took Marston's theoretical matrix and turned it into an empirical tool.
They made it practical.
Right. They built a revolutionary software and assessment system called TTI Success Insights.
They managed to translate behavioral tendencies into measurable data, and the early practical application of this was incredibly grounded. Well, Bill Bonstetter grew up in rural Iowa, and he realized that the way someone organizes their physical environment is a direct reflection of their internal cognitive structure.
Oh, that makes sense.
He figured out that an agricultural salesperson could radically increase their close rate just by looking at a farmer's property before ever shaking their hand.
Right. So if the salesperson drove up a long dirt road and saw pristine driveways, perfectly neat groves, equipment stored at exact right angles, and everything meticulously clean, they knew instantly they were dealing with a highly analytical, detail-oriented farmer.
Exactly. A blue behavior type in the DISC system.
So the salespersons wouldn't walk up and slap the guy on the back and make a loud joke.
Oh, absolutely not.
They would walk up with a clipboard, present detailed data on crop yields, and quietly answer questions.
God.
But conversely, if they drove up to a different farm and saw experimental new livestock pens, brand new buildings, half-finished, a bit of physical chaos but massive forward momentum, they were dealing with a driven, risk-taking red farmer.
And the pitch completely changes.
Okay, let's unpack this for a second.
Okay.
Because I hear this, and I really have to push back.
Okay, go for it.
When you start talking about sorting human beings into 4 color-coded categories based on how they park their tractor or how they speak, isn't this just a modern corporate version of astrology?
That is a very common critique.
Right. Because we are taking the infinite complexity of human trauma, neurodivergence, culture, and upbringing and saying, oh, you are a red, so you act this way.
Yeah.
Are we really just shoving people into rigid, simplistic boxes so management can feel like they have control?
It is the most common and necessary critique of behavioral profiling, honestly. And if the system were designed to dictate a person's entire identity, you would be absolutely right.
Yeah.
But it isn't about locking people into a box. What's fascinating here is a critical distinction from the source material. We're not talking about a person's soul here. We are talking about their operating system.
Their operating system.
Think of behavior patterns like the underlying software running on a smartphone.
Okay, so like iOS versus Android.
Exactly. If you have an iPhone and you try to send a file to an Android device using AirDrop, it fails.
Right, it doesn't work.
But the Android isn't broken. The Android isn't an idiot. It simply operates on a different fundamental architecture. It processes inputs differently.
That is a really great analogy.
The DIC system identifying reds, yellows, greens, and blues isn't about saying this is all you are. It's about recognizing the default operating system a person boots up when they are trying to solve a problem or communicate.
The book actually provides a formula for this. Behavior equals a function of personality multiplied by surrounding factors.
Yes, that's the core of it.
So what you and I see when we interact with someone isn't their core identity. We are seeing their moderated behavior.
We are seeing the mask.
Exactly. We are seeing the mask they wear to fit a specific situation, heavily influenced by their environment, and then we are filtering that mask through our own internal biases.
Which is why understanding this framework is so powerful. The goal isn't to label a coworker and dismiss them. The goal is to look at their behavior, identify the operating system they're currently running, and temporarily translate your communication into their language so that the airdrop actually goes through.
That makes total sense.
It is an exercise in intense empathy, not reductionism. By the way, if you enjoy powerful audiobook summaries and deep dives like this, make sure to subscribe to Read Less.
Absolutely. Make sure to subscribe. Okay, let's put this into practice.
Let's do it.
Let's imagine we are launching a massive high-stakes project at a company. It's stalled, it's messy, and we need someone to break through the wall and get things moving.
We need the heavy lifters.
Right. We need to call on the loudest, heaviest operating system we have. The sledgehammers. The reds.
The driven alphas. In the ancient Hippocratic framework of the four temperaments, these were the choleric individuals.
Choleric, right.
Today, we define them as bold, highly ambitious, extroverted, and intensely task-oriented.
These are the people who move at lightning speed. They are wildly competitive, completely fearless, and just brutally blunt.
Very blunt.
A red walks into a crowded room and naturally assumes command, often without even consciously deciding to do it. The power vacuum just naturally fills with their presence.
And we really have to understand the mechanism behind that behavior. When a red looks at a landscape, a project, a meeting, a market, they don't see the social dynamics first.
You just don't see them.
No, their brain bypasses the social emotional processing center and goes straight to executive function. They see the objective.
Oh.
Their core drive is answering the question, what needs to be done and how do we get there instantly?
The case studies Erikson provides for reds are genuinely terrifying, but they perfectly illustrate this mechanism.
They really do.
There's a story of a CEO who is a textbook red. His company held a fun soccer tournament every spring.
Right. Fun being the key word.
Supposedly fun. This is supposed to be a lighthearted team-building exercise. HR sets it up so people can bond.
Yeah.
But the exact second this CEO stepped onto the grass, his competitive drive took over his entire central nervous system.
He couldn't help himself.
He literally flattened anyone who stood in his way. I mean, he played so aggressively that he terrified his own staff and made their children cry.
To a different behavior type, that just looks like psychopathy.
It really does.
But when Erikson confronted the CEO about it, the executive's logic was entirely sound within his own operating system.
How did he justify it?
He explained it very clearly. He said, "It is called a soccer tournament. A tournament is a competition. If you enter a competition, the objective is to win."
I mean, technically true.
Right. Why would anyone step onto a field if they weren't trying to achieve the objective? To him, the people jogging around playfully were the ones acting irrationally.
He just couldn't turn it off. This is a guy who tried to speed read books to relax on vacation.
Oh yeah, the reading thing.
He calculated that reading 100 pages an hour was a reasonable baseline for winding down.
That relentless speed translates directly to their communication style too. Reds view words as a transaction of data.
Just purely transactional.
Completely. Consider the story of Bjorn, a red founder of a consulting company. Erikson had only been working for him for a few weeks.
Okay.
Erikson is sitting in his car in heavy traffic when his phone rings. It's Bjorn. Erikson answers politely, stating his name and the company name, expecting a conversation.
Like a normal person.
Right. But Bjorn interrupts instantly. "Were you looking for me?" Erikson says, "No." Bjorn says, "Okay," and immediately hangs up.
The entire phone call lasted exactly 8 seconds. There was no hello. There was no, "How is your day going?" There wasn't even a goodbye.
Nothing.
It was pure data extraction and immediate termination of the connection once the data was retrieved.
And Bjorn's hyper-efficiency wasn't just limited to phone calls. This is a man who regularly drove in the designated bus lane for 20 miles during his morning commute.
He knew it was entirely illegal.
Absolutely. He got pulled over and fined by the police roughly every 4 weeks.
That is insane.
But Bjorn had literally sat down and run a cost-benefit analysis. He calculated the financial costs of a $140 traffic fine against the exact number of hours he saved not sitting in gridlock over a 4-week period.
Oh my goodness.
He determined that his time was worth vastly more than the fine, making the bus lane an excellent return on investment. The rules of society were secondary to the efficiency of the goal.
But this absolute certainty that Reds possess, it creates a really bizarre psychological phenomenon for the people around them.
It does.
Because Reds are so unbelievably dominant, they project an aura of infallibility. People just instinctively defer to them, assuming they must be right because nobody could be that confident and be wrong.
It creates a reality distortion field. And the source text provides a chilling example of this with a consultant named Elizabeth.
Oh, Elizabeth's story is wild.
Tell them about Elizabeth.
Okay, so she is sitting in a boardroom with 15 highly intelligent, deeply reflective, experienced consultants. They are analyzing a specific company during an economic recession.
A tough situation.
Very. And Elizabeth sits forward and declares with absolute, unflinching confidence that this company is making $50 million a week.
And look at the mechanism of what happens in that room. $50 million a week equates to roughly $2.6 billion a year.
Which is massive.
That is a staggering revenue figure for the company in question. But not a single one of those 15 smart people challenges her. Everyone just nods and jots it down.
Why?
Because her delivery was impenetrable. Her facial expression was determined. Her voice didn't quiver. She didn't use filler words like, or I think.
She just stated it as an unalterable law of physics.
Exactly.
Later that exact same day, Erikson is driving home and here's the actual financial news report on the radio. The company was projected to earn $2.5 million a week.
2.5.
Yes. Elizabeth wasn't just wrong. She was off by $47.5 million every single week.
That is a huge margin of error.
But because her delivery was so unapologetically red, she overwrote the critical thinking skills of 15 experts.
It is a superpower, honestly, but a dangerous one.
Listening to I have to ask the obvious question. These people sound dictatorial, arrogant, and relentlessly abrasive.
They can be.
If they view the rest of humanity as obstacles and they're constantly stepping on toes and causing emotional damage in the workplace, why on earth do we even tolerate them? Why do we need Reds on a team?
Because without them, your project dies in committee.
Really?
You need Reds because they are the engine of forward momentum. When a project is stalled, when everyone else is paralyzed by the fear of making a mistake or bogged down in endless interpersonal politics, a Red will look at the barricade and simply drive a truck straight through it.
They just don't care about the politics.
They do not care if people like them, which frees them to make the highly controversial, deeply unpopular decisions that actually save companies.
So the damage they cause isn't malicious. They aren't trying to hurt your feelings. They just literally do not factor your feelings into the equation of success.
Precisely. They prioritize the goal over the relationship. And understanding that changes entirely how you must manage them or give them feedback.
Okay, how do you give a Red feedback?
If you have to confront a Red, say they are derailing a project or overriding a colleague, you have to strip away all of your own emotional armor.
So no softening the blow.
Do not try to soften the blow. Do not ask them how their weekend was.
If you start a feedback session with a Red by saying, I really value your energy, but their brain has already stopped listening.
Exactly. You must be heavily prepared. You walk in, you look them in the eye, and you go straight to the bottom line. Present the facts clearly and devoid of emotion.
Right.
And most importantly, when they inevitably push back because their instinct is to dominate the interaction, you must stand your ground.
If they push you and you fold just to keep the peace and de-escalate the tension, what happens?
You are dead to them. You lose their respect entirely, and you will never get it back. They view the world through a lens of strength and weakness. You don't have to yell at them, but you have to match their unyielding energy. If you hold your boundary, they will actually respect you more.
All right, so our theoretical project has been forcefully launched by the Reds. The walls are knocked down.
The dust is settling.
Right. But now we have to actually sell this chaotic new reality to the rest of the company. We need buy-in. We need enthusiasm.
We need the cheerleaders.
If the Reds are the engine driving the car at 100 miles an hour, our next group are the ones hanging entirely out the passenger window, singing at the top of their lungs and making best friends with the cars in the next lane.
Right.
We need the yellows.
The sunny talkers. Historically categorized as the sanguine temperament.
Sanguine. Got it.
These are extroverts, just like the Reds, but their operating system is radically different. Instead of being task-oriented, yellows are entirely relationship-oriented.
They are the wildly optimistic, highly creative, fiercely persuasive people who are the life of every single room they enter.
Always the life of the party.
They are driven by joy, laughter, and human connection. But, and this is a massive, catastrophic, but for the people managing them, they are deeply disorganized, they abhor structure, and they are genuinely terrible listeners.
For a yellow, the world is a banquet of endless possibilities. They make decisions incredibly quickly. But unlike Reds, who base their rapid decisions on a logical path to a goal, yellows base their decisions almost entirely on a gut feeling.
A gut feeling. That sounds risky.
It is. They are incredibly resourceful at finding solutions, primarily because they psychologically refuse to acknowledge that boundaries, limitations, or rules even exist.
They're the ultimate silver lining people. I mean, their optimism borders on delusion sometimes.
It really does.
There is this story in the text about a guy named Mike. Mike is deeply yellow. And objectively speaking, he is the most jinxed human being alive.
Oh, poor Mike.
This guy has had his house burgled, he's lost his job, he's crashed multiple cars. The universe constantly throws anvils at him, but nothing penetrates his armor of positivity.
Nothing at all.
He buys this rusty, barely functional old Alfa Romeo. A week later, he crashes it head-on into a lamppost. The driver's side door is completely crushed into the frame. He cannot open it.
Oh, no.
His friend calls him absolutely terrified, asking if he's injured. And Mike cheerfully replies, "It's fine, I just got out the other door."
That kind of unshakable optimism is magnetic, though. It's what makes yellows such incredible motivators, salespeople, and evangelists for a new project.
Great.
Look at the example of Marianne, a pharmaceutical sales director.
Marianne's superpower was a pure, unadulterated inspiration. Erikson writes that she could conduct a mundane sales meeting, and within 15 minutes, she would have the room so fired up and intoxicated by her vision that if she told her team to willingly jump out a fifth-story window, they would line up to do it.
She had an extraordinary ability to manipulate the emotional temperature of a room. She could take an irate customer who was calling to cancel a contract, someone absolutely furious with the company,
Right.
and just by maintaining steadfast warmth, refusing to engage with their negativity, and pivoting to grand visions, she could transition them from screaming angry to smiling to boisterous laughter within a single phone call.
But there is a dark side to all this bright, unstructured energy. And if you have ever worked in an office, you have suffered from this.
Oh, absolutely.
Because yellows process their thoughts out loud, and because they possess an unshakable, almost innocent belief that every single thought popping into their head is fascinating to everyone else, they can completely consume all the oxygen in a room.
They're the ultimate meeting hijackers.
Yes, the guy monopolizing the management meeting. This case study blew my mind.
The Peter story.
Yes. So Erikson is brought in to observe a meeting with the CEO and 7 executives. One of the executives, a man named Peter, is extremely yellow.
Extremely.
The CEO has distributed an agenda with 19 distinct items on it. Peter is officially responsible for reporting on exactly one of those items. Technically, he should be speaking for about 5% of the allotted time.
But Erikson is sitting in the corner with a stopwatch, tracking the actual dialogue.
Right.
Over the course of the meeting, Peter ended up speaking for 69% of the entire time.
69%.
He chimed in with an opinion on every single agenda item, regardless of whether it was in his department or whether he possessed a single factual data point about it.
And because yellows are so charming and often highly skilled rhetoricians, it sounded great. People were nodding along.
They were totally bought in.
But he was just spinning totally unprocessed material into the air, completely derailing the structure of the meeting.
Now, I want to talk about something that happens when you try to communicate with a yellow, because this is a massive source of workplace friction.
Oh, please do.
Listening to a yellow talk is entertaining, but trying to convey important information to a yellow feels like pouring water into a bucket with a massive hole blown in the bottom.
It really does.
You give them a piece of critical data, they nod enthusiastically, they smile, they say, "Got it," and 3 seconds later, the information has completely vanished from their brain.
Are they just totally self-absorbed? Do they simply not care about other people's input?
It feels like disrespect to the other person, but the mechanism is actually an involuntary attention filter. It's not clinical memory loss, and it's not strictly narcissism.
Okay, so what is it?
A yellow's brain is constantly hunting for dopamine. They crave stimulation, so their brain automatically tunes out anything it deems boring.
Boring.
If you sit down with a yellow and start explaining detailed background information or step-by-step logistical processes or budget constraints, their brain literally changes the channel. They will maintain eye contact, but mentally, they have left the building.
They prioritize feeling over facts. So how on earth do you manage that? Specifically, how do you give negative feedback or course correct someone whose brain automatically deletes unpleasant or boring information?
You have to bypass their optimism filter. Often, when we give negative feedback, we use the compliment sandwich.
Right. Say something nice, sneak in the criticism, end on a high note.
Exactly. But if you do that to a yellow, they will literally only hear the 2 compliments. They will completely edit out the criticism.
They'll walk out thinking, hey, my boss just pulled me in to tell me I'm doing great. Meanwhile, they are on a performance improvement plan.
Exactly. To break through, you have to strip away the pleasantries. You must present the problem clearly, concretely, and without smiling.
No smiling.
And then this is the most crucial part of managing a yellow dose. You must force them to repeat the issue back to you. You have to ask, just to ensure we're on the same page, what exactly did we just agree that you need to change?
Force them to say it out loud.
If you do not force them to verbalize the negative reality, their relentless optimism will instantly overwrite the conversation. You will walk away thinking you solved a massive HR issue, and they will walk away thinking you just had a lovely little chat about life.
That is such a practical tip. So let's look at the state of our theoretical project now. We have the reds driving it forward with a sledgehammer, creating a wake of destruction. We have the yellows cheering it on, creating massive enthusiasm, but absolutely zero organized documentation.
The chaos.
The friction is building. The burnout is imminent. We desperately need a stabilizing force.
Right.
We need people who actively absorb and neutralize all that high-octane chaotic energy. We need the greens.
The calm, relational glue of humanity. Historically, the phlegmatic temperament. Greens are the most common behavior type in the population, and thank goodness they are, because society would likely collapse without them.
They hold us together.
They do. Like yellows, they are relationship-oriented. But unlike the extroverted yellows, greens are deeply introverted.
They're the ultimate team players. They are calm, fiercely loyal, deeply thoughtful, and highly supportive.
Very supportive.
If the red wants to conquer the mountain and the yellow wants to turn the hike into a party, the green just wants to make sure everyone's backpack fits right and that nobody gets left behind on the trail.
They are motivated by the security and cohesion of the tribe. They will almost always put the needs of the collective above their own individual ambition or comfort.
There is a story in the text about Maya, the receptionist at the consulting firm, that perfectly illustrates this.
Maya was a classic green.
Maya was so intensely green that she possessed a psychological inability to say the word no to anyone asking for help. Her own desk was constantly buried under a mountain of paperwork because every time a stressed-out consultant walked by and asked her to handle a forgotten task, she took it on.
And she wasn't just managing tasks. She was managing the emotional well-being of the entire office.
Oh, she knew everything about everyone.
She memorized everyone's birthdays. She tracked their spouses' birthdays. She knew their kids' wedding anniversaries. She was the one gently reminding the frantic red and yellow consultants that they needed to go home and take care of their families.
Right.
She constantly sacrificed her own peace and workload to ensure the group felt cared for.
That level of selflessness sounds beautiful, but it can verge on the extreme to the point of self-harm. Consider Christopher.
Oh, the snow story.
Yes, Christopher was a green who accidentally locked himself out of his office building on a Sunday afternoon in the middle of winter.
A completely isolated situation where he needed immediate help.
Right. He is wearing nothing but a light t-shirt. It is 30 degrees outside, and it is lightly snowing. He's literally freezing.
So dangerous.
He has a cell phone, so he calls Erikson. But instead of saying, hey, it's Christopher, I'm freezing to death outside the building, please come let me in, he starts the call by casually asking Erikson how his weekend is going.
He engages in pleasantries while standing in the snow.
It gets worse.
Okay.
Erikson mentions he's dealing with a broken boiler. Christopher, shivering in a t-shirt, proceeds to give Erikson 15 solid minutes of highly detailed, thoughtful advice on how to fix the boiler, and even offers to call a plumber for him.
Unbelievable.
It took 15 minutes of casual, supportive conversation before Christopher finally, almost apologetically, admitted he was trapped in the freezing snow and needed a rescue.
Think about the internal operating system required to produce that behavior. The green core value is Everyone else's comfort is more important than my own, and I absolutely refuse to be a burden.
Refuse to be a burden.
Christopher would literally rather risk hypothermia than interrupt a colleague's Sunday with a sudden, demanding problem.
But that exact same intense desire for stability, peace, and cohesion leads to the dark side of green behavior. Severe, paralyzing rigidness.
They do not like change.
Greens abhor change. Change is an unknown variable. It threatens the safety of the tribe. They deeply subscribe to the philosophy that it was better the way we did it before.
And their resistance to change is often manifested through intense passive-aggressive stubbornness. Look at the story of Soon.
Soon is a guy who had his entire workday completely ruined because someone sat in his specific chair in the break room.
Just a chair.
He had a deeply ingrained routine. Every day, he sat at the same table, under a specific painting, and ate his soup. One day, a new employee is sitting in his spot. Now, a red would walk up and say, "You're in my chair, move."
Instantly.
The yellow would sit next to them and start talking to them. Soon does neither. He doesn't say a single word because asking the person to move would cause a social conflict.
Right.
Instead, he turns around, walks back to his office, skips lunch entirely, and sits at his desk brooding in silent, agonizing resentment for the rest of the day.
This fear of causing a fuss or creating friction is what Erikson defines as the harmony outlook. And in a personal friendship, harmony is great. But in a professional, high-stakes setting, the harmony outlook is the most dangerous aspect of green behavior.
Because it leads to the rotting garbage scenario.
But garbage metaphor is so visceral.
The book uses this visceral metaphor. Imagine interacting with a team composed entirely of greens. It is like sitting at a beautifully set dinner table, but right in the center of the table is a massive, rotting, stinking pile of garbage.
Everyone at the table sees the mold. Everyone smells the horrifying stench. They all know it's ruining the meal.
But nobody says a single word about it. They just politely pass the mashed potatoes around the garbage, casually swatting away the flies, making polite conversation.
Because to point at the center of the table and say, hey, there's a pile of garbage here,
Yeah.
would require acknowledging a conflict.
It would ruin the pleasant harmony of the dinner. They will endure the stench to avoid the confrontation of cleaning it up. When I read this, I deeply related to the listener who might be thinking, okay, greens sound incredibly sweet and supportive.
Yeah.
But if we pull back the layers, isn't their silence actually a form of deception?
That's a deep question.
If a green is sitting in a project meeting and the red proposes a terrible idea and the green hates it but just smiles and nods anyway to keep the peace, aren't they just lying? Are they actually trustworthy?
It's a harsh way to phrase it, but behaviorally, it functions as a lie. It is what the text calls the silent resistance. This is the psychological mechanism you must understand about greens.
Okay, what is it?
Just because they aren't arguing with you does not mean they agree with you. Greens will almost never challenge you to your face. They will nod, they will say okay, and then they will go back to their desks and quietly, stubbornly drag their feet.
Or worse, they will find another green by the coffee machine and complain endlessly behind your back because the pressure of the bad idea is building up inside them. But their operating system forbids them from venting that pressure directly at the source of the conflict.
Exactly. They leak the pressure sideways. So as a leader or a partner, you cannot mistake their silence for consent. If you present a new plan to a room full of greens and ask, does everyone agree? And the room is silent, they are not agreeing, they are hiding.
So how do you get the truth out of them?
You have to dismantle the threat of public conflict. You cannot demand their opinion in front of a group. You have to pull them aside one-on-one in a private, secure setting and gently coax their true feelings out of them.
Make it safe.
Yes. You have to prove that giving a dissenting opinion will not result in a fight. Furthermore, you cannot spring sudden changes on them. If you mandate a massive pivot on a Tuesday, a green will silently shut down. You have to introduce the idea of change gradually, allowing them time to process how it will affect their security.
All right, our project has vision, it has momentum, and thanks to the greens, the team hasn't emotionally imploded.
But we have a problem.
But there is one glaring issue remaining. Nobody has actually checked the math. The yellows promised the moon, the reds demanded it be built by tomorrow, and the greens are too polite to mention that the budget is currently upside down.
We need the final piece of the puzzle.
If greens are paralyzed by the fear of interpersonal conflict, our final group is paralyzed by the fear of making a factual mistake. We need the perfectionist analyzers. Enter the blues.
The melancholic temperament. Blues are introverted, like greens, but instead of being relationship-oriented, they are intensely task-oriented.
Highly analytical.
They are the architects of reality. They are highly analytical, extremely cautious, relentlessly fact-driven, quality-obsessed, and consequently, highly critical.
These are the people whose homes have perfectly labeled hooks for every single child's jacket. They have a 6-week rotating dinner menu taped to a refrigerator that has been cleaned with a toothbrush.
So precise.
When an app updates on their phone, they are the ones who actually scroll down and read the terms and conditions before clicking accept.
Because for a blue, navigating the world requires absolute certainty. Knowing the facts, verifying the data, is paramount to their psychological safety.
Right.
A red speaks to assert dominance. A yellow speaks to connect. A blue does not speak unless they know, with 100% empirical certainty, exactly what they're talking about.
When they finally do speak, you cannot argue with them because they have brought the receipts. A story of the DIY dad in the book perfectly captures the blue operating system.
The gravel story.
This dad is helping his adult son lay gravel for a new patio. A massive dump truck backs into the driveway and drops a mountain of gravel. The son looks at the pile, looks at the invoice and says, "Okay, that's 9 cubic meters of gravel. I read it on the side of the truck. Let's get to work."
The son accepts the presented data at face value.
But the blue dad completely ignores the son. He ignores the invoice. He slowly walks around the pile of gravel. He picks up a handful, feels the moisture content, smells the dust.
He is gathering data.
He physically paces the circumference of the pile. He calculates the geometric gradient in his head, factoring in the slope of the driveway. After several minutes of silence, he announces that the pile is exactly between 8.75 and 9.25 cubic meters.
He needed to independently verify the data points before he could commit to the reality of the situation. He trusts nothing but his own analysis.
Trust no.
And there is an incredible meta-story attached to this. When the real-life dad read this exact anecdote in the first edition of Erikson's book, his reaction wasn't to laugh at himself. He actually tracked down the author's contact info and emailed Erikson to correct him, stating that the truck in question held 12 cubic meters, not 9.
Even when reading a psychological case study about his own pedantic behavior, he could not let an inaccurate data point slide. The data must be pure.
That obsession with purity translates to how they handle professional relationships, too. Consider the CEO who wanted to hire Erikson for leadership training.
Oh, this guy.
Erikson goes in to pitch him, expecting a standard dynamic sales meeting. But the blue CEO treats it like a mathematical equation. He allocates exactly 50 minutes for the meeting, no more, no less. He explains that he factored in an 8-minute walk to the dining room and a 2-minute allowance for a bathroom break.
There is no coffee offered.
Yeah.
There is zero small talk. The CEO doesn't care about Erikson's weekend. He just looks at him and demands the documentation.
And the escalation of that documentation is staggering.
Erikson goes home and writes a highly detailed 35-page proposal. He thinks he's nailed it. He sends it over. The CEO replies with one question: "Is there any more material?"
Just one sentence.
So Erikson sighs, digs deeper, and writes an 85-page proposal broken down into 2-hour instructional intervals. He sends it. The CEO replies, "Is there any more material?"
It's never enough.
Finally, out of sheer exhausted desperation, Erikson creates a 300-page training binder. It details the minute-by-minute curriculum, including the exact timing of the 15-minute coffee breaks for a 15-day course. He sends this massive tome.
And the CEO just calmly receives it, reads it, and begins his analysis.
Look, I read these descriptions, and blues sound completely exhausting. They sound like total pessimists who just want to find the flaw in everyone else's joy.
You get a bad rap.
It feels like dealing with a human instruction manual that refuses to close. How do you even function in life if you have to check your pockets 3 times every morning just to verify your keys are mathematically present?
It is very easy for the other 3 colors to view blues as pessimistic wet blankets, but we really have to defend the blue mindset because they are not pessimists, they are realists.
Realists, okay.
They are the quality control department of the human race. To a blue, getting a project 95% right means the project is 100% wrong.
Because that 5% margin of error is where the bridge collapses.
Exactly. The text illustrates this beautifully by comparing them to Toyota engineers. Imagine there is a sudden oil leak on a factory floor. If you drop the 4 colors into that scenario.
Oh, let's see. A red executive will yell at someone to clean it up immediately so production doesn't slow down.
Right.
A yellow employee will slip in the oil, laugh about it, and tell a story about it at lunch. A green will feel deeply guilty that the oil is there and worry someone might get hurt.
But the blue doesn't just look at the oil. They ask, Why?
Specifically, they use the 5 whys method, right?
Yes. Why is there oil on the floor? Because a gasket on the machine is leaking. Why is the gasket leaking? Because it is made of poor quality rubber. Why did we buy poor quality rubber gaskets? Because purchasing changed the supplier to save money. Why did purchasing need to save money? Because the quarterly budget was slashed by corporate.
They trace the physical failure on the floor back to its absolute systemic root cause.
They don't just mop the floor. They fix the global supply chain to ensure a drop of oil never hits the concrete again. They're invaluable.
But working with them requires a shift.
Yes. To work with a Blue, you have to completely translate your operating system. You must abandon grand visions, dreams, and emotional appeals. A Blue does not care about your inspiring speech about standing on the mountaintop of success.
They want the logistics.
They want to know the logistical parameters of the hike, the caloric brain rate, and the tensile strength of the climbing rope.
You have to bring spreadsheets. You have to prove you have done the homework.
Yeah.
And above all else, if a Blue asks you a question and you do not know the answer, never, ever offer a white lie or a guess to cover the gap.
Never guess.
Say, I don't know. I will get the exact data for you. Because if a Blue catches you guessing, your credibility in their eyes is permanently destroyed.
So true. Just a quick reminder, if you are enjoying this deep dive, please subscribe to Read Less for more powerful audiobook summaries like this one.
Okay, so we've isolated these 4 colors in a theoretical vacuum. We've dissected the red sledgehammers driving the action, the yellow talkers selling the vision, the green peacekeepers holding the tribe together, and the blue instruction manuals ensuring the bridge doesn't collapse.
But the real world is not a vacuum.
No, a company, a family, a community. It is a messy, chaotic collision of all 4 operating systems being forced to share the same Wi-Fi network.
And that is exactly where the friction, the miscommunication, and the belief that you are surrounded by idiots originates.
The source text actually grounds this by interviewing 4 distinct real-world people to show how these types view each other when forced into collaboration.
Yeah, let's look at Alina.
Alina, right? She is a red CEO. She openly admits she just demands results. She doesn't have time to care if people think she's pushy. She looks at her blue employees and thinks they take an agonizing eternity to make a simple decision.
And the yellows.
She looks at her yellow employees and thinks they blow a massive amount of hot air without actually executing a single task.
Then you have Holland, a yellow advertising salesman. He looks at his blue colleagues and calls them red tape jackasses.
Red tape jackasses.
They drag down his momentum. He operates entirely on instinct and gut feeling, and he cannot stand people who demand hard facts and historical data before taking a step forward. He views them as anchors holding back the ship.
Then you have Elizabeth, a green healthcare worker. She just wants everyone in the clinic to get along. She feels the Reds are entirely too pushy, aggressive, and that they needlessly trample on people's feelings, creating a toxic environment.
And finally, Stefan, a blue economist. He looks across the aisle at the yellows and finds them completely unprofessional and utterly exhausting. To him, they have zero structure, they talk entirely too much without saying anything of substance, and they rely on gut feelings instead of empirical data, which he finds fundamentally dangerous to the organization.
The ultimate lesson from all these collisions is so beautifully counterintuitive. Human nature dictates that we want to surround ourselves with people who agree with us, who think like us. It feels easier.
It feels safe.
But Erikson lays it out clearly. If you build a team or a company out of just one single color, you are engineering a disaster.
Because you amplify the blind spots, a team of purely reds will literally tear each other apart fighting for absolute dominance. The company will burn to the ground in a war of egos.
A team of purely yellows will have an incredibly fun time. They will rent an expensive retreat. They will brainstorm a million brilliant industry-disrupting ideas, and they will produce absolutely zero finished work because nobody knows how to build a spreadsheet.
A team of purely greens will sit around politely in a circle, waiting for someone else to take the lead so they don't step on anyone's toes, and ultimately they will do nothing at all as the market passes them by.
And a team of purely blues will spend 10 straight years planning the absolutely perfect, flawless project. They will analyze every single microscopic risk factor, and they will never actually launch it because reality can never meet their standard of perfection. So as we pull all of this together, what does this actually mean for the listener? If we are stuck in this giant mixing bowl of clashing communication styles, what is the actionable takeaway?
That's the big question.
Is the goal to just become a psychological chameleon? Are we supposed to constantly, exhaustingly shift our colors and manipulate the people around us just to survive a Tuesday at the office?
It's a vital question, and we have to be very clear. The goal is not manipulation. Manipulation is using a system to extract value from someone against their interest. The goal of understanding DISE is reducing friction.
Reducing friction.
It is fundamentally an exercise in profound self-awareness and empathy. It is recognizing that the person across the table, even an idiot who is waking up every morning plotting to sabotage your life, they aren't doing it to you. They are simply trying to process a highly complex world through a completely different filter than yours.
Right. It's the ability to pause in the moment and say, wait, Bjorn isn't hanging up on me after 8 seconds because he secretly hates me and wants me to quit. He's doing it because his brain is running the red operating system and the data transaction was complete.
Exactly. You learn to speak their language. When you deal with reds, you need to speed up, drop the emotional small talk, stand your ground, and focus entirely on the goal.
When you deal with yellows, you need to bring enthusiasm, skip the pedantic fine print, let them verbally process their thoughts, but rigidly force them to confirm the key takeaways.
When you deal with greens, you need to drastically slow down. Be patient, be highly supportive, and be incredibly mindful of their deep psychological need for security, predictability, and private consensus.
And when you deal with blues, you need to be accurate, hyper-prepared, completely logical, and leave your visions and guesses at the door.
Knowledge like this is only valuable when it is actually applied in the crucible of daily life. The next time you are sitting in a conference room or standing in your kitchen and you feel your blood starting to boil because someone is moving too slow or talking way too much or demanding too many details instead of reacting with anger, just pause. Take one deep breath and ask yourself, what operating system am I dealing with right now?
It completely changes the dynamic. It takes a personal, defensive emotion out of the conflict and turns it into a fascinating puzzle to solve.
It really does.
But before we officially wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you, the listener, with a final, highly provocative thought to mull over. It's something Erikson points out that really stuck with me.
Oh, the partner question.
Yes. In your professional life, you have to play the hand you're dealt. You don't choose your coworkers. You have to learn to adapt to the reds, yellows, greens, and blues in your office out of pure necessity. But look at your personal life. Look at the partner you actively chose to spend the rest of your life with. Or look at your absolute closest circle of friends. Did you choose people who are a mirror image of your own color? Or did you subconsciously choose your complete behavioral opposite?
It's a brilliant question to investigate because very often we naturally seek out the exact tools we know we are missing from our own toolbox. The disorganized yellow marries the hyper-organized blue to survive.
We started this deep dive talking about X-rays and how incredibly comforting it is to have a clear binary diagnosis. Broken or not broken, human behavior will never be that clean.
Never.
The X-ray machine for the human mind will always be a little blurry, heavily influenced by context and emotion. But maybe, just maybe, understanding the mechanisms behind these 4 colors is the closest thing we have to clearing up those muddy waters and finally realizing that we aren't surrounded by idiots after all.
If you enjoyed this audiobook deep dive, make sure to subscribe to read less, like this video, and share it with your friends. See you in the next powerful summary.